Welcome to Persuasion and Presence for Program and Project Managers. We're in Week 1, Module 1, and in this module I'll introduce the Aristotle Rhetorical Triad, Ethos, Pathos, and Logos, or as we like to refer to it, stage presence, logical arguments, and emotional impact. Even though Aristotle's Rhetorical Triad is over 2,000 years old, you can still see it today, mostly in TV advertisements, radio advertisements, advertisements of all kinds. So I'm going to talk about a commercial that was revolutionary back in 1971, and I love to use historical examples, but we'll be using contemporary examples also. But I want to talk about this commercial, and you may have seen this. This was by Coke, and it launched the famous song, "I Want to Teach the World to Sing." And at its time in 1971, it was the most expensive commercial ever filmed. It was, at that time, $250,000, which in today's dollars would be $1.5 million. And it's a simple commercial where you have these folks come out and they're on a mountain, and it's a beautiful sunlit mountain, and they come out here with their Cokes and they're singing the song, "I Want to Teach the World to Sing." And this was created by a fellow named Bill Backer, who worked for McCann Erickson, which was an ad agency that had the Coke account. And at one point, he was in the Shannon Airport in Ireland. He was on a forced layover. They were having some mechanical problems with the plane or some type of weather issue. Anyway, he and two of his colleagues were there overnight. And he remembers that when the announcement came down that the plane was going to be delayed, that we're going to be, staying over, a lot of the passengers were angry, mad. It was a pretty tense night. So when he came back to the airport that morning, he saw that people were laughing and joking with each other, and they were having a good time. And of course, being a person who runs the Coke account, he noticed they all were drinking a Coke. And this gave him the idea for the song, "I Want to Teach the World to Sing," and the idea of how Coke helped bring these people together, or that's the way he pitched it, and helped kind of lighten the mood and bring people together in camaraderie. So that was the idea behind this commercial. So why do I bring this up? Because this commercial has the three elements of Aristotle's Rhetorical Triad. There is an emotional impact, there's a credibility impact, and there's a logic impact. And we're going to take that apart here in the next couple of lessons to show you how this Rhetorical Triad builds those. Aristotle was one of the three great ancient Greek philosophers. Aristotle was the student of Plato, and Plato was the student of Socrates. And together, these three formed the foundations for Western philosophy. And Aristotle was an amazing contributor in a lot of fields, everything from theater, drama, writing, all the sciences, politics. Aristotle basically had his hand in everything. And one of the major contributions that Aristotle gave to us was his insights into communication. Because being an ancient Greek, you were measured on how well you could persuade people and communicate. So Aristotle spent a lot of time studying communication and trying to determine what made people persuasive. And this is where he came up with his Rhetorical Triad. According to Aristotle, there are three elements for being persuasive. There is ethos, or credibility. There is pathos, or emotion. And there's logos, or logic. So let's take a look at each three in turn. Now with ethos, it's loosely translated to mean credibility, ethics. It's essentially the stage presence of the communicator, and it's foundational. If I don't trust the communicator and I don't really want to listen to their message, it doesn't matter how well they've crafted the message, how much emotion they have in the message, how much logic they have in putting together their arguments. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to pay attention to the person. So according to Aristotle, establishing your credibility, your ethos, is the first step in being persuasive. Now, this other two elements can be mixed together, and it really doesn't matter which one you go with first, although we will talk about later in the course about how effective storytelling is, and starting off with stories can help you gain the audience's attention. But let's take a look first at pathos. That's the emotion. What's the emotional appeal of your message? And according to Aristotle, you had to have basically equal amounts of logic and emotion in your message. It can vary depending on what you're talking about. I mean, in some cases, if you're doing a quick, simple status report, you probably don't need that much emotion in it, but you want to have some logical arguments. And then when you're trying to persuade a stakeholder to take a certain action, you may want to amp up the emotion a bit over the logic.
But in either case, you want to have blending of both in there. Arguments that are just totally logical and dry will fail to gain your audience's attention, whereas a little bit of emotion sprinkled on it, like a nice spice, could help you get more attention from your audience. So let's take a look at some examples again. And again, I'm going to bring a couple of advertising examples because this really shows a good blending and how you can make a good persuasive message.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying this free lesson from the University of Maryland's Project Management Center for Excellence. If you want to check out more lessons just like this one, click the link in the description below where you'll be able to go to our website on executive project management. There, you can find edX courses, professional short courses where you can learn from an instructor like me, as well as request custom team training for you and your organization. All right, let's get back to the lesson and I'll see you at the end.
So let me start with a classical ad, TV ad, that I like to use in my communication courses to tell students about the rhetorical triad. And this is Apple Computer's 1984 ad, which aired in 1984, and it has all three elements of the rhetorical triad. So first, let's just set the ethos part, the ethical. So we have Apple, well-known, still kind of a young startup company back in the early 80s, and still establishing itself, but making some great inroads, and the Apple computer at the time was becoming one of the more popular home computers to buy. So in the commercial, you see this room full of people in gray jumpsuits, and they're looking at this big screen of someone talking, and it's very, if you've read the novel, very 1984 that way, and that's what it was invoking. And in 1984, we had the U.S. Olympics, Summer Olympics, and a lot of hype around that. So you have these people sitting there watching this computer screen. They all have this blank zombie-like expression. Then all of a sudden, this young lady comes running in with a hammer and what looks like an Olympic tracksuit. And she comes running down the middle of the aisle. And then she throws the hammer at the screen and breaks it. And then a mighty wind comes out and all the folks are now awake. And then you have Apple, think different. And we have the ethics part. We talked about that, the idea of, the ethos, the presence of Apple. It's an up-and-coming company, but it does have some credibility. And then you have the emotional part, this kind of dystopian environment where we're all just numbed out by the big computing companies. And even though we never said IBM in the commercial, we know who we're talking about. And I know it's a couple of decades old, but it still resonates today. You can find it on YouTube. And then you have a great ad to watch. The emotional piece of the young woman coming in bright colors, in contrast to all the gray around her. And you see her throwing it and breaking the hold of the big computing companies. And, start with Apple, which is a young upstart. Free yourself, think differently. So there wasn't really much logos in that. I mean, there's not too many logical arguments. It was all lots of visuals and excitement and action. But there is that argument at the end, think different, which is a logical argument. So you had a lot of emotion, and it helped deliver the impact of think differently, buy a different computer. So you can see the rhetorical triad in that piece. And a contemporary example, this is something several of my students pointed out to me a couple years ago. There was a Guinness ad, y'all know Guinness beer, and I was able to find the commercial on YouTube, and it shows a group of young men playing basketball, and they're all in wheelchairs, and it is a very rough fight out there. I mean, they're playing it really tough. People are flipping over in their wheelchairs. It's a real athletic demonstration. So watching about 20 seconds of this, in the commercial, and I'm thinking, okay, well, they're playing basketball. It looks pretty cool. And then at the end, all of the gentlemen get up except for one, out of the wheelchairs. They unstrap themselves from the wheelchairs. They get up and they escort their friend out of the friend who's still in the wheelchair out of the basketball court. And it has that emotional impact. And the idea here, if you couldn't guess, and you should look at this on YouTube, is that these are good friends and they're helping support their colleague. Now, you can see the ethos. It's Guinness Beer Company, and we all know about Guinness Beer, and it's got a credibility. It's got a good reputation or a well-known reputation. And you see the ethos. I mean, that's the ethos part. Then you see the pathos, the emotion, where you see a game and you see all these folks playing, and you get that sudden shock at the end that they're all okay except for the one fellow that's in the wheelchair. They're helping out a friend here. And then there's this logic piece. So, I should buy beer because Guinness is helpful and it helps people be helpful to each other. And that's where some of the controversy came about with the logos. What exactly was Guinness saying here? Or were they just using this to sell more beer? So if you want to have some fun, go look on YouTube, look at the controversies around that ad. But again, when we look at our commercials, we look at our rhetorical and our persuasive ideas, we're looking for ethos, logos, and pathos. And throughout this course, we're going to talk about those and how to build your persuasive messages so that you have an equal amount of those or that you use them to your advantage depending on the situation you're in.
Hey there, did you enjoy that lesson as much as I did? If you did, go ahead and give us a like. If you want to see another one, go ahead and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, put them below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Moreover, is there somebody in your life who really needs this lesson right now? If so, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Now, we look forward to seeing you in the next lesson where you can learn even more from the University of Maryland Project Management Center for Excellence. Thanks so much.